We live in a new world now. The old world had us come up with ideas, sit with them for a while, ruminate on potential solutions before even setting pen to paper. The new world looks more like this. I get an idea, and instead of having to do that boring part of sitting and thinking about it, I can just open a chat and start executing. I know that's a mistake, yet I do it anyway. And it's a mistake because the pause that I skipped was where the idea gets sharpened and evolves. What we're seeing with AI chatbots and AI in general is a stripping to the mean. AI is always going to generate down to the average. For above average writers, what makes them above average is brought back down to average when put through an AI chatbot. Those who are below average would be brought up to an average writer. That's because AI, when left to its own devices, is designed to output the average. So the more we have ideas and jump straight to execution, relying on AI to do it or figure it out, we're removing friction from our idea. But thinking is not friction to be removed or smoothed over or ignored, because thinking is the point. I'll start by saying that this is not an AI bad video. I'm actually a huge fan of AI and think it can do marvelous things in the hands of a skilled person. It really does make it easier to go from idea to outcome without being bogged down by all the silly implementation steps in between. This video isn't about how bad AI is. What I want to talk about is the future that's being built with it and what that future is forfeiting should we pursue it fully. I believe there is a lot of benefit to AI today. When you've put in a lot of work thinking through the architecture or structure of what you're working on and then hand it off to an AI chatbot, you can see some really good work come out of that situation. We've seen robust products, good writing, and good design assisted by AI. But there is a line, and in many ways that line is often crossed in inappropriate ways. So where is the boundary? It's between execution and cognition. When we code or write new software, we could simply send a single prompt to Codex or Claude and have it build a full app for us. It would hammer out the details and create a fully fleshed out project that matches exactly what we prompted, and it happens very quickly. That execution part is a good thing because writing code is not the point. Creating a product that delights customers is. Bypassing the grunt work can be beneficial. The problem starts when we forfeit our cognition and let AI make all the architecture and design decisions. AI is not human. It does not understand tension, friction, or poor user experience because it doesn't use the product the way a user would. That's where the human comes in, guiding rather than being guided by AI in structural and architectural design calls. AI can help refine ideas, but if it creates the roadmap, the product risks becoming average or brittle. The same applies to writing. If you have ideas but don't know how to organize them linearly or sensibly, there's no problem asking AI, hey, can you help me outline this piece I'm working on? It's okay to get a second opinion by sending your piece to AI to check for blind spots or typos. However, the cost adds up when you ask AI to clean something up and then accept those suggestions without thinking. You start to lose your voice and the uniqueness of your work. The very thing AI tends to erase turns into something more average. When you send your idea to an AI chatbot and have a good conversation back and forth refining your idea, some truly good work can come from it. But when you hand off that work outright, the points that you try to make might be smoothed over. The points may become more agreeable but less impactful. And the message that you're trying to communicate is neutered by the chatbot, trained to remove any kind of excellence or superior writing because that's just what it's trained to do. Your taste, your judgment, all of that starts to get washed out. So if the line is between execution and cognition, then why do we see so many people sprinting across it? Before we talk about that, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Also, consider becoming a member on YouTube or Patreon to gain early access to my videos. Your support makes these videos possible. Thank you. Now let's get back to it. I don't know if it's just me, but there's this feeling of societal pressure on us right now. Us as individuals, us as developers, writers, knowledge workers, or just us as humans. That pressure is translating into the removal of friction in our lives. So let's look at it as individuals. If you spent any amount of time on LinkedIn, Reddit, or any other social media, you've seen an explosion of content being produced, all clearly either completely written or heavily guided by AI. When you read each post, if you can even stomach that much, you start to notice that they all read about the same things. They're all pretty average, and the things that would make them human are stripped away. Those platforms reward volume and engagement. Combine that with our AI chatbots that make infinite output free, and we see people posting more just to be seen more. Even replies to posts on LinkedIn or Reddit are heavily influenced by AI. I'm not saying everybody does that. That's an overgeneralization. But when I scroll through my LinkedIn feed or browse Reddit, time and again I see so many AI-generated posts that are clearly dehumanized in every single way, and they sound like a robot is talking to you. It makes us feel that the post is inauthentic, and we're unable to believe what we're actually reading, or to trust that the person who actually wrote the thing actually wrote it. We see this at work as well through all the AI-washed layoffs we've been seeing from places like Wix, Webflow, and other tech companies. It's cheaper to cut people and overwork those who remain. That's not necessarily novel. We've seen this before when tech companies lay off 20% of the workforce and then don't rehire. The most recent case I can think of, though I don't have a study to back it up, is when Twitter was acquired by Elon Musk. He cut much of the staff but expected the same output. So when the staff was cut, there were fewer engineers, but those engineers were required to do the same amount of work. Whether that worked is up for debate, but the point remains, fewer developers do more work. With AI, we see it a little differently because having a 5x, 10x, or 100x developer stops being a standout. They're no longer an anomaly or an outlier. They're the baseline. If one developer can do the work of 10 because they have truly mastered AI and how to work with it, that becomes the new standard. If you don't live up to that standard, you're out of luck. So we have this pressure to keep up and to really pursue learning how to use AI effectively, which I'd argue is a good thing. You want to be able to use your tools well. On the flip side, when we try to do this too fast and jump straight to execution, we start to see the balls drop, both for us individually on social media and for us at work. We always saw friction as the ceiling. We could never push through that ceiling unless we put in real effort. But now with AI producing output so cheaply, it costs nothing to post on LinkedIn or Reddit, not even time anymore. All it costs is maybe a subscription if you have one. If not, the free plan probably works just fine. So while I'm a fan of AI used correctly, I also know that we're currently building a future that treats thinking as a friction to be removed. But thinking is the one thing in this new AI world that's worth protecting. I'll give you 3 reasons why I think so. The first reason is homogenization. Homogenization is simply a big word that means to make things uniform or similar. Given a simple input, AI is always going to output something that is largely average. Given enough time with good writing and letting AI make adjustments, everything is going to regress to the same competent but voiceless average. Everything is going to sound like a robot wrote it because a robot did write it. Our ideas slowly get stripped out, iteration after iteration, until all that's left is the aggregate of all of the writing from across the internet, because that is what is in our AI chatbot's dataset. When we check our brain at the door or leave it at the altar of our favorite AI chatbot, what we're truly sacrificing is our unique individual human voice. The voice that this world, believe it or not, needs to hear. The second reason is burnout, because once thinking is handled, the only thing left to measure a person on is the volume that they can output. And if the volume is the measurement, we can rest assured that there is always going to be someone out there who outputs more than we do. We see on Twitter or Instagram about the 10x, 100x developer taking on more work than any one human should. And then that's who we, as individuals, are forced to compare ourselves against. This is how we burn out a generation. The third reason is the removal of silence and boredom. I don't have enough fingers and toes to count how many new ideas have come up out of the blue. Instead of pausing and asking, is this a good idea to pursue? I just jump straight to Claude and start building something. But if I had taken time to pause and think about what has come to mind, maybe one of those ideas would have actually become something, or I would have realized that the project wasn't necessarily the best use of my time. Because without the pause and in the hands of AI, each of those ideas went from potentially great to middling. But why does AI produce average by design? Wouldn't these companies be more highly incentivized to create products that create great things? Yes, but that's not how LLMs work. They cannot create anything novel or completely new. Models can only predict what the next likeliest token, word, or character is given an input. And that means that average isn't a failure in this case. Hitting about average is what AI companies are shooting for, because likeliest is the statistical center of everything the LLM is trained on. Maybe you've seen this chart. It's from a study that sought to compare human writing to AI writing. What we see is that for each of these AI models, the shape is roughly the same, but the human one has a very distinct shape, very different from all of the LLM shapes. This chart represents the word choices, the pacing, the tension, how the plot progresses, all in a large set of stories that averaged about 5,000 words each. The clearest thing to see here is that the solid black line, which represents the average, and the dashed black line, representing the median, all fall around the 50% mark in rarity across all the LLMs. DeepSeek nails it almost exactly. But for humans, we see above average rarity in their stories and narrative, which goes beyond just word choice and into structure, how thoughts are formed, and more. That proves that while human writing refined through editing leads to sharpening, AI writing left to its own devices regresses to the mean in every sense of the word. So when you ask ChatGPT to clean up your writing, an email, or a text message, it's really pulling your message toward the mean of everyone else's messages. Your voice, the thing that makes you unique, gets sanded off because grinding outliers down to the mean is what AI is supposed to do. If we relegate our thoughts and forfeit them to AI, instead of pushing back or actually refining an idea, what we end up with are people who sit at the slot machine of a chatbot and hope the next time they hit enter, they hit some literary jackpot or billion-dollar idea, when all AI is good at is generating average prose. The literary jackpot or the billion-dollar idea was never inside the slot machine. Now, I hear you. AI is just a tool, like calculators, spell check, and GPS. Each automates a skill, and we didn't get dumber. We actually moved up in cognition because it freed us up to do other things. And yes, this is true. Calculators removed the need to do a bunch of math by hand on paper. We don't need to know how to do long division anymore. Spell check means those who are not great at spelling don't have to be, because your computer can do it for you. And for those who are geographically challenged, GPS has their back. All of these are valuable tools. And another thing I've been hinting at is that AI is great at implementation. It takes the boring part, all the grunt work out of our day-to-day so we can be freed up to do higher value thinking. I agree. I love that I can come up with an idea, flesh it out, and have AI take care of the output part for me so I can focus on the outcome. It has never been an argument that AI is not great at execution, because it is excellent at executing. I agree with that wholeheartedly. But this starts to fall apart when we get to writing, as we've talked about, and judgment. While we write and work through our idea, executing those particular skills is actually thinking. The doing is the thinking here. There's no boring part here that you can safely delegate to an AI chatbot, because what you're delegating is the part that makes it yours. And freed up for higher thinking assumes the system, where the output goes, rewards thinking when it rewards volume. The argument that I'm making has not been AI versus no AI. I've said many times that I use AI. I use it pretty extensively. For better or for worse, it does seem to be a tool that is going to stick around for a while. The argument is about execution versus cognition, the doing versus the thinking, because the incentives push us across that line whether we mean to cross it or not. It is just so easy to open up the app on your phone or the command line on your computer and say, Claude, ChatGPT, I want to build this, build it for me, and then let it do whatever it wants to do. That's how you get something that is incredibly average. I've hinted at this a couple of times now, but this predates AI. This is not something that's new, so let's talk about that now. There was a study done in the year 2000 by McGuire that examined the brains of humans with extensive navigation experience. London taxi drivers were the perfect subjects. The researchers compared these drivers to control subjects who did not drive taxis and found that the taxi drivers had larger hippocampal gray matter because they had built the city in their heads. London cabbies called this the knowledge. With that knowledge, they could navigate anywhere in the city without issue. But with the advent of GPS, turn-by-turn directions made that knowledge obsolete. I have never gotten into an Uber or Lyft that tried to navigate without using GPS. When GPS arrived and turn-by-turn directions were at our fingertips, we outsourced cognition. When we outsource thinking, the capacity to think atrophies. We no longer need to memorize the city, its roads, and shortcuts because Google Maps does it for us. But as far as I can tell, London cabbies still use the knowledge, not GPS, to navigate the London streets. They have not had that skill atrophy. We can apply this to what we're seeing now. AI is smoothing out the friction in our lives, and we call that efficiency. Yet those slow, quiet, boring parts weren't inefficiencies. It's in those slow, quiet, mundane moments that the work actually happens. When we have friction to work through, to think through, that means we need to physically or mentally build muscle. The more we physically or mentally build that muscle, the stronger it becomes until it becomes easier and easier to do the thing that yesterday was too impossible or too hard for us to conquer. That happens when there's friction. And so where this leads, where smoothing out the friction leads, is a world world where the well-reasoned and indistinguishable become synonymous, where a piece that seems to cover every base with a perfect argument that has no flaws and robotic cadence is the same as every other piece on that same topic. There is no point. It's been washed out in the AI cycle. It has become average. The future that we're seeing be built with AI treats thinking as friction. Execution is the currency by which all of our software, thought leadership, and art is being produced. But when we jump straight to execution and forego thinking, the back and forth with ourselves and with others, the silence or the boredom, the ruminating of an idea where we can feel some new life forming in our heads and in our hearts, we lose a part of ourselves in the process. With each rep we don't take, the muscle required to build, think, and process atrophies, and all that's left is flaccid fibers hanging on by a thread. Execution is important, but execution nowadays is cheap. It doesn't take much to spin up Claude Code to write a piece of software. It doesn't take much to spin up ChatGPT to write an essay. What's expensive and what's at stake is thinking. It's cognition. What's at stake is a generation of people releasing their first draft of its thought and calling it production ready, when in fact, it's fragile, meaningless, and average. Something that anybody else could have made because it's trained on things everyone else has already made. This generation will feel as productive as ever, churning out massive amounts of volume and burning out in the process. But what do you think? Is there a better balance than what I'm saying here? Can you truly have excellent thoughts produced or generated by AI? What do you allow your AI chatbot to do, and what do you hold on to? When was the last time you sat with an idea before you jumped into producing it? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Before I wrap this up, I wanted to give a quick shout out to all my Patreon and YouTube members. Thank you so much for your support. Remember, you too can support my channel and receive early access to my videos. The links to do that are in the description. But until then, I'll see you in the next video.